Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
While we kind of settle into the class and wait for the whole cohort to come, I'm going to suggest for those of us that were here that we kind of stand up a sec, take ourselves out of our familiar Zoom seat. And if you want to follow me, I'm trying to do something to bring us present today, which is kind of find out where you're feeling any tension in your body and just put some intention there. And then when you're comfortable, move away from the camera and do the same thing. Pay yourself some attention and then come back. So I'm going to move away, find out where I'm stressed in my body, deal with it, and come back. And I encourage you to do the same. Well, I felt that as a twist. That's what my body wanted this morning. I wanted a twist. And I wanted it on both sides. Does anybody else have any discoveries about where their body was wanting some attention today? I got to go one more time. I got to have one more round. So I encourage any of you who want to, just looking at the screen and each other, like realize that this is just one version of yourself, right? What you're looking at. But in the very same moment in time, I encourage you to take a minute now and either turn your screen off or move yourself away from your screen and check in about where your body needs some attention and then come back. So anybody who's still out there listening to me, stay out there as long as you want. You can listen in on the conversation and move around your space. And I encourage us to experience that, like leaving your audio on. If you feel like while we share, walk around and see if you listen more carefully as you move away from the screen. Or see if you listen more carefully. How do you listen more carefully? That's a question for you. What is the shape of your body and breath when you're most attuned to listening? So let's just spar here for a minute. Anybody can talk about what they're feeling in their body, and everybody else can either ramble or sit there and listen. Just whatever your body is telling you, how you do the best listening, do it. And anybody who wants to talk about their body or their breath or where they're at, feel free to talk, and don't expect anybody to be like listening with their face on the screen. Maybe listening where they can hear you somewhere else. How does that change your story? I howled at the wind on Saturday night at a party. My quote unquote band, Sonic Division, played the closing party for Desert X, and I put a screen in front of me that is a musical instrument I made many years ago after a walk in a pine forest. And this crazy wind just shook it around. And behind that wind, I just let whatever wanted to come out of me at that moment, come out of me. And it literally blew me away. Like the wind blowing and me blowing blew me away. I could not come back down from that. Like, party over. After that was like a full-on cyclone experience, and I'd never done that before. And that's what like speculation is for me. So, just want to give us an exercise. Anybody else have anything they want to share? Because I can ramble on about my weekend. But did moving your body or moving away teach you anything about listening?
Yeah, a lot of my movement practice has to do with the fascia, like that space where, I don't know, where these hard joints meet, this softness that is necessary to see mobility, that softness that carries our structures, internal structures, and just like moving with that always brings like a smile to my face. And like moving with that smile, I feel like almost gives a fascia a sense of inner smile. Like, I don't know, I feel like when you allow softness in the body and like listening with that sense of like what is hard, it's always met with something soft. And that's one of the best lessons the body can teach. And I felt that when I was moving.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just started working with a movement coach who works with fascial release. I've only had 3 sessions with her, but it's a deal changer for me because I didn't know that gentleness was an option for stretching. Like, I've always sort of thought of stretching as like going to the edge. And she's like totally reframing my understanding of it. It's quite radical. And the idea that you could feel that on a Zoom or in a collective conversation is an interesting thing to workshop. What is the right tone of an engagement where you have that fluidity of movement in a class situation? What does that look like? Like now, I'm just going to keep moving, everyone, because that's what my body wants. And I encourage you throughout this class, as we explore our creativity together, to feel free, rather than have me structure in a break, right? We're just going to go with flow today. And when you need to take a break, take a break. Don't let your attention lapse. That's your responsibility, not mine, right? I don't want to be in the role of having to entertain people in a creative studio class. I want to let it flow and know that no one's going to take it personally if you are in charge of what you need to be able to listen, if that makes any sense, right? So we'll just let it flow and see how that goes today. I'm just really surprised how much my body's telling me to stretch right now. Like my knee is folded in my lap and it's creating space between like my right cheek of my bottom and my knee, and my hand is kind of pulling my right knee away, and I'm slightly leaning back in that hip. And I've got on my other hand, my left hand on my right toes, and I'm circulating them. So I'm feeling like the energy moving through my body, and I'm on Zoom, and I have never experienced this before. Like, I have never experienced trying to be in a classroom situation where I'm tuning into what I need to be present with all of you and inviting you to discover that for yourself. And, you know, I believe that that has something to do with Bridal's book on ways of being, because I think that what he's trying to say is that technology can be an embodied experience. It doesn't need to be cerebral. Cerebral has not done too great for our species so far. So maybe us becoming more ourselves and releasing some of that to technology is a way to reach higher consciousness. But I think we're going to have to breathe into it. Somatic technology is nice. That's another great name for a band.
I started to experience this also in learning and mending. Like the first two times the first time the movement of Roxanne was at the end versus at the beginning, I felt like I was entering the collective reading experience in a very different way. And I've experienced it the same in post-human infrastructure, where at the beginning we do either a breathing exercise or movement and connecting to our bodies. It's definitely creates a very embodied and intuitive experience of a classroom and sense of connectedness.
I also think that, Alex, I think sometimes about the video that you shared in the last after the last post-human infrastructure about the tornado clean exercise we did, and how you danced by the water and the tall grasses. You did a movement video.
Was that the black and white video, or it might have been someone else? Mine
No.
was, yeah.
We
Mine
talked
was,
about movement, your movement practice.
yeah, I think in the last class I showed a video where I was doing those black and white photos of becoming a tornado.
Yeah. Was that it?
Yeah, it wasn't with it wasn't I can't remember about but yeah, mine was I showed a video of movement black and white and all these shadows. Yeah.
I was just thinking about how much that kind of looked like your maps in this class, you know? And I thought it'd be interesting, you know, for you to play with superimposing those maps and that video from the last class as one image.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Well, it just, you know, came to me, you know, because it's been one kind of, you know, you've taken both semesters, and it seems like the works have been living in my mind this week as vibrational fields, you know. And I think as a you know, just as a kind of closing class, I want to be able to also just free form tell you different people who I've been working with, you know, things that have been sitting with me, you know.
Yeah.
And how that relates to this conversation about embodied practice and technology, right? Because the way in doesn't need to be like techie, like Silicon Valley tech nerds who know how to like program. The way in can be embodied, can be artistic, can be inquisitive, can be speculative. You know, we've been playing with that like heady stuff as at my installation, the largest now I was going to say now it's become an inversion from the largest sea with the smallest heart. We had a very large heart in a swimming pool of a blue whale, and now we put the heart in the real Salton Sea, and there was a storm the first night, and our pictures are like, holy shit, you know. So I was thinking, like, ironically, the project went from the smallest sea with the largest heart to the largest sea with the smallest heart right away. Amazing. But we've been talking with a fluency about the facts of science in meeting with the general public that is purely speculative. Because as artists, we don't have to be responsible for telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth. We can tell a little bit of truth with a lot of speculation for the purposes of uplifting the heart as a strategy for building a culture of care. And so we use technology, like ChatGPT, I did, Adam did, to source and resource some of our content. And Jamie Grace went the other direction, I observed in the installation, by using the class structure, like the assignment we did on what ifs. She took it directly into social practice. So like by the next week, she had people standing around the pool, rubbing their eyes and looking into the glacial past and asking what if, right? So again, if that wasn't for technology, right, we wouldn't have had this class, and she wouldn't have made it an embodied translation back. So it doesn't always have to be just one way. And I think that's what Bridal's book is getting at. There's no need to be afraid of a tool, right? If you can use it as a tool. And that's why I wanted to have this last class be a bit of exploring just one tool in that, because it kind of workshops it and gives us a chance to talk about it. So anyone else have anything to say about all that? Am I making sense so far? Okay. I wanted us to be aware that through Bridal's lens, that we should always be questioning technology, and the same concept of bringing down the patriarchy is embedded in the post-human infrastructure. It's only by us using it that it will become what we want it to become. So don't buy into it's only for those smart tech guys, because that's just not true. It's another myth that people have been feeding you. All right, so, and affecting its design. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point. I was listening to a podcast the other day about weirdology or weirding. There's a whole kind of new kind of academic movement in weirding. It's a fabulous word. And it's, if anyone wants to listen to it, I'll put it in the thread. It's on the Interdependence podcast on Patreon. They were talking about making the technical wires non-gendered. Like, you know, how there's male, female wires. I wanted to like change that, like physical way that you put things together to make them non-binary. It's fantastic. Again, just a very embodied thing. Like, you know, we need to do the work of clearing up how the power structure operates in your daily life, including using breath and body movement with technology to get us somatically present for these engagements so that we're not only in our head. And also because we're in each other's intimate spaces. Do you sit in your room like that? I mean, you remember if you're having phone calls with your best friend, you're kind of doing what Teresa's doing right now. She's modeling that you can be jumping and listening at the same time. She's fully somatically present. I would listen way better to half the podcasts I listen to, or half the like big Zoom conferences, or if it was totally fine for me to keep on my camera and do what she's doing, I would be glued to the screen watching what the heck everybody was doing. And that starts to bring back that we are human beings. We are not machines. Even the way that cameras are designed, everything is about keeping you in a box, right? But we choose to accept that. Like if we just all said, all right, you know, don't turn off your camera, but if you need to walk away, take your time and space. You know, you're responsible for your own attention span. And if you're jammed, it's like stretching. Go for the fascial release. Go for the gentlest possible way through. Breathe into it. Why wouldn't that strategy for technology be a good one? So, all right, I want to make sure we have time for everybody's work, but I just wanted to kind of get us to say that keep this flow going. Like if you're feeling when we're going through somebody's work that you need to get up and stretch, where none of us are going to think you're not there, right? Because we release you from intending to be present 100% of the time. Okay, so in advance, I wanted to thank you all for sending in such inspiring what ifs. And I wanted to thank Jack and Alex in advance for facilitating today's jam session of what ifs on Midjourney. Alex, thank you for posting the Google Docs of what ifs, and please, feel free to keep adding. All of this will go on the Water Community Powered Discord for you to access and even keep working with later this week. So we'll also put again that link into the Discord and remind you that next week's class will be on Discord at the same time for anybody who wants to practice working on that format. So if you'd like to keep working together in any form, next week will be a landing pad to kind of just feel that out. Okay, so Jack and Alex, how do you want to, should we start by having anybody who would like to present their own speculations on AI to go first, or should we go straight into, you guys opening your screens? Does anybody?
I have some I could share.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Jack.
I do
Sure.
too.
Nice.
Great.
You want to go first, Rainey?
No, it's fine. Go for it.
Let's see. I have them open here. I'm going to share the screen. So can we see this slide deck?
Yep.
So when I got lost, I went up towards the Topanga area Palisades, and I was kind of driving these meandering roads, and I found this view of Los Angeles that was pretty interesting, where you could see the towers and they meet the coast. And I thought it was just an interesting view to consider when the built environment meets the biosphere, or like how a natural landscape would enter a built environment. And so the two main terms I fed the AI were green infrastructure and like biomorphic architecture, based off Glenn Small's biomorphic architecture. So it came up with all these interesting perspectives of these kind of biomorphic architectural shapes and these sort of landscape type forms, and these sort of infrastructural corridors of green space, but then surrounded by Los Angeles or urban space. So some of these I was really happy with. I really liked in this one the type of green corridor that was formed around the river in context with the urban space. I really liked some of the architectural forms that were coming in through the term biomorphic architecture, and then you could see how they were kind of wedged into the city. Yeah. And so the two main terms were green infrastructure and biomorphic architecture. And I got some pretty good results. And then I tried to do some in the mapping perspective as well, where you can see the parcelization and the kind of grids of the streets, but it's mostly green space, it seems like, in the mapping perspective. So I was trying to do this type of aerial view, imitating that kind of view from above that I got in my initial getting lost. I thought it was interesting view, but I wanted to share these Mid-Journey images. I thought they were very exciting. Yeah. And I could
So
put
Jack,
that.
I guess we should also explain that the bottom ones were related to a prompt I gave you,
Mhm.
right?
The-
Just so that we have the prompts, because the ones with the river, didn't you do for Metabolic Studio with the idea of creating an image, a speculative ecological image for bending the river?
Right, I used the map we made as like a reference image to drive it, and then I
Right.
combined it with a few key terms, green infrastructure. I think it was just green infrastructure that I combined it with.
That's really, really interesting. If you can share those prompts, that would be really helpful. So you didn't use prompts, what if, right?
No, I just kind of said like, what if there was green infrastructure and biomorphic architecture in the environment, and then I took away the what if and just said there is green
Oh,
infrastructure.
okay, that's a really helpful fact. Do you have any compare contrast of the images that you generated from the what if and there is?
No, I don't, because I never used the what if.
Oh, you never used that prompt.
No,
How come?
because just from the history of working with the Discord app, I found to get the best results was just typing them in as if they were already existing. There's just a certain way to speak to it.
Okay, but I'm just saying, what if gave you something different?
I don't know, I never tried it.
Aha. We're getting into the epistemological
Yeah.
question of what drives algorithms,
Yeah.
right?
I use what ifs and they're really random and I like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of thing I wanted to talk about in class because, you know, this bridge between language, poetics, and visualizations, like what guides your quest, the image or the speculation? And how does languaging that in the AI give you different images? So I think it's really good just in terms of the class to understand that Jack's images were made by him feeding the AI an image as a base layer and then saying there is instead of what if. So if you wanted to make an image that looked more definitive on your speculative ecology, I just want to, you know, in terms of this studio class, not just to look at the image, but to talk about it in relationship to speculative ecology, right?
Mhm.
Which is the subject of the class. The reason why I asked Jack to make an image for me was that I need to create a vision of the future of the city that's understandable by government officials, of what bending the river can drive. So they need to be embedded in something they know, like the city, as it looks from a satellite image. Like I can't just go wild and give them biomorphic mounds. They'll be like, what's that, right? So they have to be able to know something, right? But that's why that Lucy Lippard question is part of what I want you to talk about. What do you want to say? Who do you want to say it? And how do you want to say it? You know, what are you making the image for? Like what, because it changes how you talk to the AI. Thank you so much for sharing, Jack. Beautiful work, very compelling images, beautiful use of colors. Did you tweak the colors at all in Photoshop or did Midjourney give you that?
No, those are straight out of Midjourney.
They were really, I thought they were very beautiful and they look very like the air is clean. I always think of LA with dust in the air.
Mhm.
So I thought it was interesting that they took the dust out and that could have been a what if question. You could have had to say, what if you take the dust out? But they did it already. which is something weird about AI. Like ChatGPT is super optimistic, right? So that's one of the ways they seduce you is they'll always say, and that's why your idea is so brilliant at the end. And you're like, wow, like somebody really gets me, you know? And then you ask enough questions, you realize they always say that at the end. They always like, and that's how teachers are busting their high school students. Because high schoolers are notoriously not optimistic about academic stuff, especially literature. So if everybody in the class comes back with like super optimistic conclusions that have no grammatical errors, they're going to like, you know, plagiarism. But is it? Or is it just an intelligent budgeting of your time? Do the homework and then go out and do what you want to do. That's certainly what I would have done. Rainey, did you want to share something you've made?
Sure.
Jack, thank you so much. And would you share whatever you want in the chat bar with us from your work? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I put my PDF in there. It's kind of a big download.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
So I feel like I'm using this AI as more of a creative thought partner. And I have to confess, I created like 70 images. I went nuts. I had so much fun. And I feel like it's a tool that I can now respond to relative to what it is I actually want to try to build. Like the images are very provocative to me in terms of how can I realize these and how do they relate to my initial question was this idea of, I did pop it in the chat, but like, how can we create a sensor system that allows us to create empathy and understanding for the more than human world? And what I was able to do, because I started to look at how to build the prompts a little bit, was pull in this marriage of different artists whose work I really respond to. And, you know, in terms of randomness, it's combining them however it feels like. And the images are these potential sensor systems. So I'll just go through a few of them to kind of share the direction that the AI took me, rather than all 70 of them. And again, I don't really know what they are yet, but I'm very curious as to how to realize them.
Would it be okay to ask you to read the prompts while the images are up so I can just
Sure.
stare at the images while you read?
Sure. This one I don't actually have in the speaker notes, so
Okay.
it's the prompt that I
Yeah.
stuck in the chat. Most of
Right.
them are actually the same prompt. This one is slightly different. What if we could translate the intelligence of the forest to human speech, emotions for sensations, in the style of Ernesto Neto sculpture, installation, leaves, water, and snow. So I started to give it some characteristics. This one is essentially the same, but it's a marriage of in the style of Ernesto Neto, Doris Salcedo, and Andy Goldsworthy. And the description is a little bit more evolved. Sculpture, installation, leaves, water, snow, ephemeral in the forest, sensors on the trees, showing breathing, which is something that I really wanted to evoke. Same. But this one also has wearables on people, redwood streams, salmon, bears, and outside. And this one, the prompt actually starts to shift a little bit. What if people could be guardians of specific trees or ecosystems through sensor systems that translate the umwelt of one to another? And then the rest of it is the same. Same. Actually the same. Kind of love this one. a relative of that one. An early one that sort of morphed into many different directions. This being one of those directions, another direction. And then this one that was totally different. And I kind of like this notion of the sensor to sensor system. And I feel like that's a good sample of where I went.
Wow, these are incredible.
I want to build them all.
How are you feeling about this kind of idea of the relationship you're having with the AI? Like, how's that feeling for you?
I am so excited and fired up. Like, I can't wait to build some of this stuff. I don't even know what that means yet, but yeah, this is the next phase of the work.
I'm so happy. I can feel that excitement. I feel excited. Like, I think all of those images are really compelling places that my mind wants to spend time in. And that's super interesting. Was this Midjourney or was this a different?
It's Midjourney.
Interesting. Now, see already, everybody, like two people using the same AI, and I'm very interested. Like, when I'm looking at this picture, I could imagine that Jack could generate an image where there's a person in one of those green mounds looking up at the city behind it, you know, because that's one of the things that I'm wondering, like, how come the AI didn't generate any people in Jack's image, but did generate people in yours?
I think the people were in some of the prompts.
Because you said, what if people,
Yeah.
yeah, in some of the prompts, but in other prompts, you didn't have the people part, right?
Yeah. And there are no people.
So it's interesting to know that you need to maybe say people if you want a person.
Yeah, like, no people.
How do you feel about the ones that have people versus the ones that don't?
I think the people ones bring the idea more alive.
The scale of it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if I were going to use these as concepts to try to pitch something, I think the people would be really important because that relationship is the core of the idea.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have any responses to Rainy's images or Jack and Rainy's two Midjourney things, questions, technical questions, conceptual questions?
I also wanted to say, I feel like the biomorphic quality is present in both Jack and my imagery. Like, there's a relationship, which is interesting.
I like also that your images, Rainy, are completely zero gravity. Like those visual structures are like gossamer wings. They're like, I read some of Jamie Grace's What Ifs, where she said, what if butterflies were as big as buildings? You know, there's an aspect to these that feel like gravityless. And so that becomes a really interesting question about the translation of some of these into physical form, you know. And, you know, it makes me think about Nancy Baker Cahill's Fourth Wall app, where you can make augmented reality images for people to look at in their iPhone and see these installations without them being there, but they're spatial, like you have to go there to look at them.
Ooh.
So you need to get, you know, you can't just like look at the image without being in a place that has got like some kind of marker in it that this is where you stand and look at the image.
What is it called?
It's called The Fourth Wall. I'll put the app in the chat bar. It's a free app that the artist Nancy Baker Cahill evolved so that people could make their own augmented reality pieces. Anybody else have any comments? I wonder if you could just like quickly like go through all of them that you generated, like, you know, like as fast as you can, so it like flickers.
I'm
Like,
happy to. This is already an edited version, but yeah, this is only 30 of the
Okay.
70, but I was trying to, you know.
it would be really cool to
Edit.
make a little like video where you put all of them in and just what, you know, the what ifs are. It would be a wonderful little document.
Yeah, it exists. It's a larger file. I'm happy to post to
Sure.
some people are
Okay.
interested.
Cool. Anybody else have anything they want to share that they've done?
I can share what I've done. I generated a few images,
Cool.
but I didn't use Mid Journey. I used this one I found online called Stable Diffusion. Actually, let me pull it up. I'm just gonna add the images to the chat. If that's cool.
Sure.
Okay. So my what ifs centered around like kind of like adding the poetry of what I know about Black sage and what I know about the nervous system, and generating images that are about like that kind of can describe its uses of relaxing, of getting to the root of like really just helping people feel more connected to their bodies. But I wanted to use AI to show that actually happening. So here's some of the images that were generated. They came out really cool in my opinion. Like they came out really dreamy, and like since I was adding poetry, like I was adding like, what if a plant can help you feel connected to your ancestors? What if a plant helped you breathe deeper just from the sweet scent of it? What if sweetness as, you know, like just kind of like adding poetry, bringing these like elements of like, and then also I started saying like about adding like more styles, like after I added like words like Black, like what can a plant do for a Black nervous system? What can a plant, you know, and then so what I liked about adding the poetry is that it just kind of like offered these new visions of what plant and body could mean for each other, and about like being a steward of a body, adding lessons to what it means to be steward for plants and land. So it was like really beautiful to like feel the poetry guide the images and like help me kind of put, I don't know, a visual to what ideas are generating with even like understanding this plant.
Wow, these are so incredible. They make me feel like they're painted already. Are you having any urge to paint these at all?
Yeah, and like I've been trying to like, you know, those like graphics for like Instagram and stuff, and like I'm creating this workshop right now about like sacred rage and about like letting like public space and like having space for people to feel that sense of like, I don't know, because like these images have been like kind of adding to like that as well. Like this is also an image I generated, and like care, and so like it's definitely adding to like the language itself and to like how I'm thinking about crafting this workshop. And I want people to feel that. I want people to feel like this plant is as much a part of you as like, I don't know, like just kind of like feel that connection. So when I'm generating these images, I kind of like get more senses of that, like the words come easier. So yes, the images are helping to like create more of that. And here's one of my favorites. I asked the AI to generate what a nervous system in space looks like with Black sage, and it gave me this, which is really interesting. Like this is a nervous system in space in this one AI. Like it's just a swirling mass covering a light, and like for some reason the Black sage for them kind of became more of like a fern. And I love this idea of like these orbs floating around the plant, and like that's really even the knowledge is coming. Like I don't know, it's just it's been helping me a lot with like adding a visual language to what I want to even embody in the workshops and embody for people.
Jasmine, what did you give them any color guidance?
No. Well, the one with the words, I edited colors, And then the other ones, I don't know. I know I didn't edit these. No, they just came like that. But like this is their nervous system.
I think it's interesting, all the multiple words talking about like, what was the word we used? Epistemology, or that these are word-based generated images. So you could, there's like a word I came across named dendritic. I don't know if you've ever heard that word, but it means branching.
Mm,
So, but if you say this word to the AI, it would understand it, dendritic passageways,
mhm.
or
Mhm.
even like using the term fractal, just that these type of fibrous networks exist so many places in nature. There's so many words for it. And I think like using synonyms for nervous system and fibrous tendrils even, I don't know, there's so many, and you can get so many results, but it's really amazing work. Super excited to see it.
Thank you. Yeah, that last image I included where I started to exchange the word nervous system for like rings of Saturn. Like I started to think about like ways that even like to even like I think that like since when I started to add in this space and like especially with what was going on with that nervous system there, and even when I'm studying with Saturn and its rings just being like an orbit of things, like I don't know, like exactly like this idea of like changing the wording and like adding in like I haven't heard that word. Can you repeat it again? Denodendron. But I even
I'll put it in the chat.
yeah, but even changing words to like ecotone or like gave me this one or like rings of Saturn as like a body interacting with space brought me this one, which was really weird. I was like, whoa. So it's like, yeah, the words really define the style in this one stable diffusion AI free thing online. I'm going to start using Midjourney, but I found this one online and it's been pretty fun.
I also noticed or wanted to say that we're dendritic in terms of our veins and the systems in our body, and so are the plants that are appearing in your images. So there's this interesting crossover that the AI is discovering or revealing.
So beautiful, Jasmine, blown away. How are you feeling about the sort of post-human capacity from this work? Has it changed the way you feel about it, or using it been inspiring for you?
Yeah, it's been super inspiring. Like I've always been able to use words very well. It's always been like my shining point is like words, performance, blah, blah, blah. But I've always been intimidated by like, the visual element of things, like making the like, you know, like making the images for the presentation has always been like, whoa, like I can like describe things very well, but like this part has been that like wall for me. And this helps the wall feel so much more opaque. This helps the wall feel like, oh, it's actually just going to generate more. Like if anything, like it's not a space to feel like limited, it's a space to feel like expansive. So that was really helpful, like super helpful. So yeah, I'm just excited to see where it goes and like keep adding, finding ways to add images, add words to these images and like show that meaning making happening. And I think it will be beautiful to do this when I lead my workshop later this month, like to actually like and like to bring other bodies into this knowledge is like going to be really special. I think like to use these images as a guiding post, but like also be like, okay, now here's some movements that we can do that like help you feel your own systems within your body. And then like we'll have the Black Sage in the room and we can like actually feel the embodiment of what these images could mean. So that feels exciting.
It really does. I'm just looking at the image that looks kind of most like a rib cage. There's like a strong sort of spine area with like curved ribs coming out. I think it's the second image you posted.
Yeah.
I also
Yeah.
think that's so evocative of some of our conversations about other than human beings, you know, because that can be both like from the kingdom of animals or the kingdom of plants.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or even the kingdom of trees. I mean, I love the ambiguity.
Yeah,
And
or a Radiohead music cover, like a Radiohead album cover. Like I don't know, like it also just like speaks to this almost like punk or rock. It
totally.
feels kind of like rock to me, or like, I don't know. It shows the sedimentary elements of just like both. I don't know. Yeah, I agree. It really speaks to this sense of like interconnectedness of cells branching out.
What was the verbal prompt again for that one?
What if Black Sage, let me look at it. I actually wrote it down. Let me just go back to it. What lessons does Black Sage have for our nervous systems? What does Black Sage look like in space with bodies? What can Black Sage teach us about living in our bodies? What else did I put in? Black Sage in space with bodies, nervous systems moving with Black Sage. But like every time the plant was Black Sage. So I think that's also what added some really interesting elements, because I don't even know if the AI knew what that really was. I think they were always guessing. And that was kind of fun. Like that's a firm in one of these images. I'm like, okay.
I love that you stuck with the what if prompt though, correct? You were asking what if?
I was asking what ifs and then letting that lead to like just like either simpler things. Like sometimes I'd take out the what ifs and just say nervous system, plants, like, yeah, or like, and then it transitioned into like the Saturn ring images and like things like I don't, these are just a few of them, but like I would start it off with the what ifs and then let it just lead me down to just like smaller and smaller, like, yeah. And this one also learns, like this stable diffusion does learn. So I think that it was kind of learning about what I was getting to the root of. But at the end, like in the end of my journey with this, I just started to ask this like diffusion of rings with Black Sage, diffusion. And then it gets like, it all ended up with this last image. So I started with the what ifs, but it led down.
Thank you so much. Mind blown.
I was inspired and I just put in a prompt and share based off what you made.
Oh, cool. Did you put it in the file, Jack? In the chat?
I'll put it in right now.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the fun thing. We can everybody feel free, like this is a jam session, right? So if you've got your computer open and you're playing while people are sharing, totally cool, right? I want people to feel like we're in a studio together, right? We're workshopping these. I mean, that's what art schools need to do, right? So, and we're doing post-human art school, so feel free to play and just keep adding. Does anybody else have anything they would like to share that they've made?
I can go.
Cool. Thanks, Eva. Thanks, Jasmine.
So I originally started with some other AI, like not Midjourney, some of the free AI generators. So I thought it'd be interesting to show what I got from those first, and then spoiler alert, I caved and got Midjourney because I really wanted to see what Midjourney would give me, and I thought it was really interesting to compare the kinds of images I got. So this one, I think my prompt was like, what if there was a river running through Glendale, California? Because I think I've mentioned this before, I live near the Verdugo Wash, which is a tributary that connects to the LA River, and it's also completely concretized. So that was just one of my prompts. And then see, like, this is one of the images it gave me, and it's showing a river. It kind of maybe looks like Glendale, but it's pretty blurry. This was another one that was like the river prompt. This also kind of looks like downtown Glendale. So these were the images I got through Crayon, and also this other one called Night Cafe. And then I caved and got Midjourney. And I just think the quality of the images was so much better. I was really amazed to see the level of detail. I think this prompt was, what if, let's see, I think I can see here. Oh yeah, so the place that I got lost and I made my mind map was this park in Glendale called Nibley Park. So I think I wrote like, what if Nibley Park in Glendale, California was covered in native plants? And so it gave me this image, which I thought was really beautiful. Right now that park is like mostly grass. So I thought this was really beautiful. And then this one was, what if the concrete was removed from the Verdugo Wash in Glendale, California? And it gave me this image. Right now there's like really high concrete walls. So I thought this was really inspiring to see this. And then this like bird's eye view. I think maybe I had set specifically bird's eye view for this one. Let's see. Yeah, this one was not a what if question. I said bird's eye view of a river running through Glendale, California. And yeah, I'm just amazed at the level of detail, honestly. I was not getting this type of quality from some of these other AI generators. And this is also another one about when I said, what if the concrete was removed from the Verdugo Wash? It just looks like such a more pleasant space to be in than what I have right now. So yeah, and another one of my prompts was about like the hills here, because they're constantly, like land there is constantly being sold and developed. And I think I had said something in my list about like, what if instead of selling the land to continue developing really large single family homes, it was a open space for people to explore. And I think this one I wrote something like, what if the mountains in Glendale were covered in California poppies? Just because I see the poppies every day at the moon and it makes me feel so good to see them. So I just had this thought of what if I had like other people could experience that all the time here. And I think this, let's see, what was this one? I guess this one was also, no, that can't be what it was. This was probably also what if the park had native plants. And I believe this was, oh, this I just made actually because I was inspired by Rainey's prompt saying, what if people, so I added people in here. I said like, what if people had a green space that they could explore in Glendale, California or something like that. Yeah, so that was my exploration. Honestly, like I can't tell you, I just think it's so fascinating, like that rush while the images are developing when it's still blurry, and then when it like all of a sudden it clicks and is clear is just kind of addicting. Like I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but it
Totally.
was really exciting.
Sorry, Yeva, thank you. Great work. I'm curious in all of the images, and maybe you could just kind of flip through them real quickly. There's such a strong central path. Like everything has like a central path, whether it's water or a road or
Yeah.
like cobblestone pathway. And I was curious, is there anything in your prompt that suggests a central path, or is that just what the image generator is giving you? And if so, what do you think that is?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I see it, but I didn't realize before. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I put anything specific to suggest that. I think when I got,
Can you read the prompts, a couple of them?
yeah. So this one was like, what if the concrete was removed from the Verdugo Wash in Glendale, California? And it gave me image like this.
And then could you read like that one too?
This one was like, what if the hills of Glendale, California were covered in California poppies?
See, I just
This-
don't get how they came up with that, like that strong central road that moves through the center of the picture. You didn't feed it the image like Jack did. That's
No, no,
just
no.
what it came up with. 'Cause
Yeah,
that
same as
just
the
feels
children.
like there's some kind of algorithm that says that somehow the focal center is going to be a space of movement to me.
Hmm.
Could you do the one with
Yeah.
the cobblestone path?
Yeah, this one, I think this was, let me see, I can double check because I have the chat here. But I think I had written, what if, yeah, just wrote, what if Nibley Park in Glendale, California was filled with native plants? It gave me this. And actually now I'm looking at it, all 4 of the images it gave me were had that kind of path running
Yeah.
through it, just
Yeah,
different
that's what
variations
I
of
kind
it.
of noticed. Does anybody like who's used Midjourney think there's anything embedded in the prompt which does that? Or I challenge the Jedi of Midjourney, Jack Rendler, to take your prompt and give us one that doesn't have a central path
Mhm.
in it, and how he would have to figure that out. Because I just find that really fascinating that all your images have like a space of flow right in the middle of it, whether it's road,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, like this one as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
it's not something I was noticing, but now that you say it, for sure. Yeah,
How,
I
how,
don't.
how are you feeling about the speculations themselves? Do the visual images fit what you like creatively? When you ask the what ifs, did you get something that advanced your ideas forward, or something totally separate that took you in a new direction? Like, what was your experience of using this?
So I think it definitely inspired me a lot. I think there's something um, about it that just is really helpful for workshopping ideas. I think I, up to before this, had some, I was a little hesitant to use it. I don't know, as someone who is an artist and creates by hand, I think sometimes we have this moment of like, oh, is this thing gonna be able to do what I do, sort of like fear.
Mhm.
And I think that from my experience, this is what I did for the assignment, but once I signed up for Midjourney, I couldn't help but like put in a bunch of other, prompts and questions and just really explore. And I think that there are certain things that if I'm like trying to be really specific about something, like I was trying to see something that I've created, can it do exactly that just by prompting? And I felt like it couldn't, but it was super inspiring. Like it would give me some ideas for other designs. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's really interesting. So I think like as a workshopping tool, it's really fascinating and super inspiring, especially with these more like photoreal imaginings, because I don't feel like I could, probably I could, but it'd take me so long to try to like Photoshop and visualize like a realistic scene in the way that this is doing. So um I'm just honestly so amazed by it. Like, and also looking at like Rainey's images, I don't know, it's like really moving. It's kind of like a something I'm gonna really have to sit and think about, because it's like incredible what the technology is doing. So
Thank you. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that, Yeva. And thank you for referencing Rainey's work in that way. This is, I think, why we take these classes, right? Is to step out of just what we can do, to see what other people are doing, because it kind of, shakes things up a little bit, right? Where there are limits to what we can do. And when you leave like actual formal school, you have to rely on like a practice that builds those bridges to others, to stay connected and creatively alive and relevant. For some of us means staying interconnected, and you don't always get that going to galleries. A lot of that work is strategic. It's not all of it, But, you know, being in practice with others can be a really helpful thing, which is why I'm encouraging us to move to Discord after the class so that we can continue to workshop some of these ideas. And part of the reason I'm using Midjourney in this class is that Midjourney offers support as part of its Discord. So my experience was joining it was free. So I don't know why, maybe it's changed and they're charging something now, but when I joined it a month ago, it was free. And they had like thousands of people on their tutorials and they were free too. And so the idea that you can like meet with people on there who are doing things is a really good way to, even if you're not doing it, to learn what they are and learn about prompts and stuff like that. So good to know about these free educational opportunities that could be tools that can help you. So thank you for giving it a try, and thank you for acknowledging that listening to another artist maybe made you have to think about like what what your what the ceiling you would hit would be about. Anybody have any responses to Yeva's share? I was really your image facilitated my thinking, Yeva, with the poppies on the hill with the road going through it, because I know where that place is in my like bodily experience. And it's a really good place to really feel the basins of LA, you know, because I think when you're down in them, you see the hills through like a lot of layers of infrastructure and smog and dust, and you can see them, but to actually reverse that point of view and see the basin from hills, that was really helpful for me to see. So thank you for like sharing that image, because I felt really inspired by that perspective on the basin. Jack, sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to say something?
I just thought the overall atmosphere and color and lighting were really awesome for Eva's images, and I was wondering if she typed in anything like atmospheric lighting, or I don't know. I guess, yeah.
No, I
So-
didn't, but I felt like I felt similarly, like, oh wow, it just looks so beautiful. And you know, it's like the place where I've lived most of my life. And so you know, I felt like it really was a projection of the place I live. So it felt accurate to me in that way, which was really like so surprising. And something that I didn't necessarily feel with the other AI generators. It was kind of blurry. I felt like it could just sort of be anywhere, but that was the thing that I was just really shocked by with Midjourney. I was like, no, that looks like Glendale. Like that really looks like Glendale to me. But no, I didn't give any prompt for the colors or the atmosphere, but I also really liked whatever style it gave me. I thought it was really beautiful.
I in the first post-human infrastructure class I hosted at Alternative Art School, the first question was, where are you from? What makes you, and what element makes you in reference to where you're from? And that statement you just made about being somewhere that you've lived all your life and feeding that as a prompt in some form to an AI, it's almost like you develop trust in it because you got something back that felt familiar but different. Like it wasn't trying to like be your imagination of it, but it had enough reference that like you kind of built like a first level, okay, there's something here, right? Kind of thing. Would you say that's correct? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, maybe I should share this just because actually it was inspired by Jasmine's question last week about the mountain of black sage in Compton. And so at some point I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put all this stuff. I was just so excited. So like I'm Armenian, I was born in Armenia, but I moved here. I'm always thinking about like my interconnectedness of like mentally being and spiritually in one place and this place. And like in Armenia, the big symbol there is our mountain, Mount Ararat, which is actually across the border on the land of in Turkey. So, but it's like such a big spiritual symbol. And so I was like, you know what, let me type, what if Mount Ararat was in Glendale, California? Because there's such a big Armenian community here. And I feel like spiritually, that's how we feel sometimes, that that mountain is here. Obviously it's not, but so I had done like I'll just show real fast. In Midjourney, like this was the prompt. So it gave me
Wow.
this image and this one. And I was like, wow, you know, it's actually so interesting because landscape wise, there's so many similarities between California and Armenia. And so it just like fit so perfectly seeing it like this. And see, these were through Midjourney. I didn't give it any stylistic prompt, but it was more like, it looks like a painting to me versus the other ones were photoreal. I don't know why it chose to do that. And then this one was actually through one of the like free AI art generators, which to me felt like I didn't feel that same emotional. It just looked a little bit like copy pasted, but these I was like, wow, these are so beautiful. This looks like my neighborhood. The mountain is right there, just kind of like encapsulates maybe how a lot of Armenians here like emotionally feel. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, Yeva. That is so cool.
Mm.
And it just makes me think so much about like trying to learn how to teach this class because, you know, the first session that I had in the first class was so deeply connected to what you just made, which is in a way connected to the whole conversation about where are we from and what do we bring to our practices. So being able to see, like for me, being able to see that the kind of ecozone of the mountains and the hills and the basins are your ecozone, like not just in where you physically live, but in your epigenetic roots, you know, is such a great reference point to be able to talk about things in general, right? As a person whose epigenetic roots come from the desert, right? So like my knowledge base in my like biome is desert. And yours is probably more hills and mountains. And so like it starts to defeat and bring the idea of patriotism down, right? Because your identification is with Glendale and Armenia. Like that should be able to, you should be able to form a community in a post-human way that are your people without it being just about Southern California, right? I just find that really interesting in terms of speculation and how we form imagery that, like, who do you want to say it to, right? I bet you get a lot of friends in your community by posting that image on some kind of chat room that had to do with Armenians in Northeast LA, you know, or the LA County, you know? So I just think coming back to that Lucy Lipp part, who is the image you're making this for, right? And what is it that you want to say? And the symbolic mountains is a very interesting way to think about also the ecological care that we want to build. And having it be embodied and personal and yet general at the same time is tricky. It's very tricky to do. Can be done, but I think this is a really good example of how AI can be an ally in that development of thought and speculation. Wonderful work. Thank you for sharing it. I think, Jamie Grace, did you want to make a comment? I saw something in the chat bar, or are you happy to just leave it? Please feel free to like chime in whenever you want to. I see you're in a cafe, I think. So you probably check the, yeah.
It's a little noisy here. I don't know if the background music is distracting, but if you can't hear that, that's good. If you can hear me, good. I have an interesting share that is a bit of a dog leg away from exactly our prompts, but whenever it's time, I'm very interested to share it.
Go for it.
Okay, so I love this practice, and one of my biggest concerns is like, what if people stop imagining? What if people let fear take over and stay contracted and don't exercise the muscle of what if? And in doing this, I went back through some of the things I had harvested, and I feel like, as if the personal is political, some of our greatest political power is actually in like the meeting of others and the encounter of others, much based off of Carl Jung's idea that people are like chemicals or like colors, and when they get mixed, they make a new color. When they get interacted, if there's any chemical interaction at all, both are changed forever. It's a quote by Carl Jung that I've often held near and dear to my heart. And so I often think about like how this idea of hysterical utopias, like what's the best thing that could happen out of this? You know, it's so easy to live in this world and catastrophize, but what about the opposite of that? What if we just thought about the best things that could happen and then like went towards that direction? So in the harvesting of my genesis of this class, I was thinking about an artist I'd met once upon a time. And this was when we were harvesting our artist influences of post-human infrastructure. And the two artists I chose, there's a handful, but Thomas Saraceno has done a lot of work with lithium in Argentina and the mining and waterways and infrastructure and networks. And we've all had the pleasure to be in deep conversation with Lauren, who is working in my conception is working at that same level of scale. And so I thought, well, what if Thomas and Lauren got to have a conversation? And I accidentally wrote it in the chat AI incorrectly. I wrote Thomas Saraceno in conversation with Lauren Vaughn. I left out the N, and the images between the two are so fascinating. I'd love to post them if anyone is interested in seeing them. They're quite fascinating. And then I added the N just to see what the difference was. And I found it to be really fascinating. So sometimes that one little letter, you know, one little misspelling, and then a whole nother world opens up. So I will post them and you guys can enjoy in love and service of the world being better when good people meet each other.
I can share a new prompt that emerged just now by being inspired by everyone. But basically, in the first time I took the post-human infrastructure class, Lauren made me think about my work through the lens of movement. And in my creative work, I take many weeks to think about things, even though I consume a lot of information. So it's only now that this idea of movement got activated for me and through the lens of post-human infrastructure. And I've learned that there is a field of ecology called movement ecology, which studies the way, I'm just going to share my screen, which studies the way or other organisms move through the web of life. And that inspired me to experiment with a different prompt. And my prompt is, what if design with movement ecology in mind, how plants, animal, fungi, well, I was going to say viruses, but I say vertices, move through the web of life. Yeah, I got some very interesting images like this one. And it's interesting to me because when I was looking at that paper on movement ecology, if you recall, one of my drawings was, oh my goodness, where is my drawing? Is it this one? Oh, this is an image of the community garden that I did my get lost exercise, and where I was observing the movement of the morning clock butterfly or the birds, or so. That's where the image emerged from. And the other one, I guess, yeah. Did I put double? Oops. And this was the drawing. Cannot find the drawing, but it was like a very chaotic drawing. And then I realized that from that paper on movement ecology, the way the ecologists are drawing the movement of different species, it's kind of in the same chaotic matter. So it just made me think
Sorry,
of how,
Alex, can I ask you a question?
yes,
Those two drawings with black lines on white,
Yes.
are those prompts themselves, or are those, like, what are those?
oh, these are images I screenshotted
Okay.
from this paper. On
Oh,
movement
okay.
ecology. And these are some of the ways ecologists were like kind of depicting the movement of an organism through time.
Oh, wow. It looks so choreographic, like it almost looks like a video
Yeah.
dance or something. That's incredible.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to find the drawing I did the first time, but I just cannot find it. I guess it was, oh gosh. Sorry. It's right here. So this was my drawing that emerged in that community garden when I was mapping. So yeah, I thought it was like an interesting resemblance of movement ecology and what my hand was intuitively drawing or trying to tell me. And then, yeah, I asked, what if design with movement ecology in mind, how plants, animals, fungi move through the web of life? And yeah, these are some of the images that emerged from me. But
Wait,
the
so did you feed the AI the image from the park is like,
Mhm.
so,
Yeah.
and then did you also feed it your drawing, or how did it get close approximation?
Yes, the image of the garden and the image of and my own drawing. But just before I start talking now, I was experimenting with these images from the paper itself
Yeah.
that depict the images of the organisms moving through time.
So you can actually feed more than one image into Midjourney at
Yes,
a time, almost like you would Photoshop.
yes.
And
yes.
then you, in addition, also asked a what if?
Mhm. Yeah, here I asked what if, yeah, the same question. This is my prompt.
Can you give us the full image and then read the prompt to it? Because the image is so compelling. I want to just fall
Yeah.
into it.
So this is, I fed it this image of the garden. And that I took. Oops. And I fed it, oh. Interesting. I guess it's not, I don't know why it's not showing all the images I fed into it, but I also fed it the drawing I just previously showed. So yeah. And earlier I was also, and yeah, this one was what if design with what if we design with movement ecology in mind, and it created the same kind of patterns. And yeah, I've also been experimenting a lot with what if we create water retention landscapes. And I guess here I fed it an image of rain. I'm not truly sure why it keeps showing the same image, because I didn't feed. Anyways, sorry for the confusion. Here I ask, what if we create water retention landscape and removes the concrete? Oh, and this time gave it my own self-portrait, and then this image of a rain garden. And it generated this. But yeah, these are, just wanted to share my new experiments, but just wanted to point to the realization of the movement ecology and how that's kind of emerged to be from the last post-human infrastructure in this class.
Okay, so I needed about 5 times longer with every single image. The images are incredibly complex, aren't they? There's adding all of those layers makes them really complex. It's almost like layers of veils. How do you feel about that? Is that giving you something like I'm thinking about some early experiments in photography by Julia Margaret Cameron, where there's this kind of feeling of fireflies and gardens at night and the way things dash around at night, and you try and capture them but can't, and they make these interesting kind of lines. And that there's a kind of quality of delightfulness about the way the image gets rendered with those lines for me. And I'm wondering if that's coming close to something you're trying to get at. Does that make sense to you at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on one side it articulated a question for me on how to represent the movement of the more than human world in an urban setting, or they're seeing how ecologists have depicted. I mean, I definitely need to research more, but it was very inspiring to see that. I was also thinking of dance notations and how to represent movement over time. Yeah, it's very interesting. I feel like there's many different ideas emerging, but just being in this energy field, the other week I met someone who is doing his dissertation at Brown on all the ponds that have been paved on in Providence. So that in itself, like I didn't even question that before, but that last week I was also creating those images with the vortex in an urban setting, and how kind of like it breaks things apart and allows life to emerge. So I don't know, I feel very inspired, but there's a lot of energy, creative energy. And yeah, I'm just very happy that I found movement ecology, because that is what I was seeking for all this time, I guess.
Alex, can you just say a little bit more about movement ecology?
Movement ecology, from what I understand so far, my limited understanding from last week, but yeah, the ecologists are studying how different species, the more than human world, are moving through the world, and that includes foraging or hunting, or any kind of movement that through time. And also, if we haven't gotten the chance this class to read from the Internet of Animals, but if you're reading Ways of Being by James Bridle, they speak about the same idea of how urban infrastructure are limiting the movement of other species through the landscape. And not just urban infrastructure, all kinds of infrastructure, and how we can design with that in mind. Bridle doesn't call it movement ecology, but I think it talks about the same idea. And I guess in the first class we talked about wildlife corridors, and that's a way to and yeah, I guess movement ecology allows us to create infrastructure, to know how to track other species and know where to situate these infrastructures for the more than human world.
What an incredible presentation. Thank you so much. I feel so inspired that you've discovered a way to kind of use your embodied practice and your speculations as to how we can literally unpave and create places that creatures can move to, which are water, like embedded in the movement of ecology is the movement from one place to another that has water there.
Yes, thank you, Lauren.
Oh.
It's all because of you, so.
Oh, hardly. I cannot possibly take credit for that, but I'm happy that we found each other and that we've inspired each other. And I'm hopeful for you that this way of thinking and this way of using image making can be a tool for you, you know, because I know as somebody coming from an experience of sort of team sports and movement into thinking about the microorganisms and the position of the microorganisms in space. Vibration and movement and all of these things are very hard to communicate visually.
Yes.
And I think that at least what I'm seeing in your explorations on AI, I see that there's something that looks like a useful tool for you.
It truly is. Yeah, it allows this image making. At first, like Yeva, I was so hesitant. And then now I'm doing it obsessively, and it allows to, yeah, it's a great tool. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else have any crosstalk? Feel free to jump in. I thought also there was a really interesting dialogue in my mind between the place in Providence that began for you to be where you got lost in, and the space where Rainey's forest was, and the images that she created were of a very also still place, like the people were in contemplation of what was around them, and in yours everything is in flux and movement, you know, and through these veils, and hers is like hypercrystalline. And like I had this storyboard going on in my mind where like in this movie, people go from your space to hers or back and forth, you know, it's like these speculative ecologies, like you could imagine coming through that forest or coming from the Glendale Hill. And like, there's chambers of mind that sort of fit in some of these. Now, yours was Midjourney as well, right, Alex?
Yes, Midjourney. Yeah, and for most of my prompts, I either used my own drawings or photos I took, or I created with images. I didn't just give it the words. And yeah, that's something I really like too. Like, it just makes me think of, it adds to, because I always take photos of everything. So it becomes a very interesting process when you blend images or you blend a photograph and a drawing, or so yeah, it's a very, very interesting process. I also think that a book that inspired me deeply, and I'll put it here, it's called Sensitive Chaos by Theodore Skiernek. I've never been able to say his name, but it's called The Creation of Flowing Forms in Water and Air. And at some point, I mean, throughout the book, he speaks about the movement of water and air and currents, and there's all these amazing diagrams in it. So I want to start thinking through the lens of that book to create more images, because there are amazing diagrams in that book. And yeah, this idea of chaos and flow and currents and movement.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much.
So we just did this workshop at the studio with Betsy Damon on flow forms, and it was focused on how water moves, being the generative element in its wellness. And I think in creating these like speculative ecologies, that connection between movement of organisms and the problematics of infrastructure is very connected to water.
Yeah,
Because how can things move through without those resources? So if you colonize a watershed and you move all of the available water somewhere else, there's some reparation work that needs to be acknowledged. And so creating imagery about that, I think, is really critical, because it's not embedded in culture at the moment to think of other than human beings.
yeah.
And
It's
those dance lines, those waggle lines that you've been drawing with Kelly in Learning and Mending as post-human diagrams, and some of those diagrammatic dance lines are I think really good and really interesting, and really science and arty kind of ways of thinking about creating novel ways of thinking about infrastructure. That's a very different way of sort of just like, for example, in Jack's imagery, where you see water kind of moving into the infrastructure of an LA basin. That's not the only flow form you can use, So I think that's just interesting to think about, like the flight pattern of hummingbirds or things that are moving, but you can't see. They are also diagrams of water.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I learned about this book when I got to RISD in 2019, and I was obsessed with it, and I didn't know why for 2 or 3 years. And in Post-Human Infrastructure, Amy mentioned the book Water Talks by Betsy Damon. And in the first pages, she mentioned that that's the book that inspired her the most. So the book then acquired a new meaning for me, because I never thought about infrastructure to the lens of that book before. So it's a very interesting connection there. But yeah, she mentions the book in her book.
Will you put that's sensitive chaos?
Yes. Yeah. The creation of air and water and air forms.
Cool. The next class that I probably do, if I do another class for the Alternative Art School in the fall, will be partly with Betsy on flow forms and vibrational fields as infrastructure. So that's really helpful to see it. Jack, what are you coming up with on? You posted some images. Is that the flight pattern of a hummingbird through LA? Please say yes.
Basically, yes. I'm thinking about birds and murmurations and how their pathways are like calculus and mathematical space lattices. And
that's so beautiful. What's the prompts there?
I wrote the description, geometry, and mathematics of a murmuration, calculus, drawing, interpolated Bezier curves.
Can you put that in the chat, Curve, for those of us who will never remember that?
Yeah, I wouldn't remember it.
I was talking to a friend this weekend, I can't remember who is a poet, about AI generated poetry, and this kind of conversation we're having, where you have an image like that and you say, what's the description of that that would produce that image? And all of a sudden that becomes the basis for a new kind of post-human poetry, right?
Yeah, I find myself using the like far fringes of my vocabulary when I'm trying to describe these images. But it's interesting because descriptive geometry is like an architectural concept when describing rotations and sort of moving the assembly of pieces into place, and sort of arcs and lines that describe the trajectory of components. So just trying to use, but I know that there's drawings made using descriptive geometry and architecture. So kind of using the language that describes a type of movement somewhere else and then using that graphic language that describes movement somewhere else to describe the bird's movement. It actually, I think, looks pretty legitimate in terms of how it forms the lattice. Yeah.
Would anybody else like to share anything that they have created? Because otherwise we can, yeah,
No, I was just going to be really brief because mine is a completely different experience. But I'm super inspired by listening and looking at all these gorgeous things. I couldn't work on Midjourney for some reason, and I tried the other one that starts with a D, and it wouldn't let me get very far either. So I think I need some tech help. But I used Crayon, and I just and I'm going to share my screen. Can I share both of them? No, I'll just share one at a time. And so I was trying to go for a water filter that was kind of like Berkey that went along with an Airstream. And I tried for an hour or more to get to get it to be like a low horizontal cylinder that would actually be what I imagined, which would be long and low. So it would be very wide, I guess. So the water is gravity fed, the wastewater is going in there and getting clean, and then would have a way to get out to a vegetable garden. So these were the closest thing. And I mean, there were many that just had an Airstream or just had a water filter, or if I didn't put Berkey in, then they had like other random kinds of water filters. And so my experience with it was that it had never seen something like that. And so it couldn't make it. Like I tried so many different ways of using language, and it was like it was only gonna do the things that it already knew. And this is Crayon, so it's obviously not as good of an app. So if I maybe experienced it on
would you like to try
Midjourney,
it? Can we workshop it a minute? Are you cool with that?
Sure.
Would either Jack or Alex like to share your screen, either one of you? Or both?
I could share my screen. And we
Okay,
can
cool.
work it.
I also just put it in this Midjourney, and it's thinking.
Okay. So, and could you say your prompt, Constance, the way you would like to say it if you weren't working with any limitations?
I'm going to put this in the chat because this is one of the ones that worked. So I have a very clear picture in my mind of what I imagine, and these are not that, because I was imagining it next to the Airstream where the wastewater comes out of the hose and going directly into a very long, low horizontal, and see how all the filters are also not attractive. Like there's some way that I'm sure that somebody can make an Airstream.
So
I like
if
this
one-
one. This one looks interesting.
Jack, can you go to that one? Can you isolate that one?
That's on Yeva's Discord, so she can maybe upscale it.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
Yeva's?
But do you see how it's
Yeah.
not attached to the Airstream? So it's a water filter and it's separate from the Airstream.
You
So
want it to be connected,
yeah, because the whole idea is that you get the wastewater.
right? So let's workshop how to say that. Jack, can you help? Can you
Yeah.
help language that?
So first is the component, cylindrical water filter, and then I would say attached instead of next to.
Yep, I've tried that.
Attached. Oh,
Attached to,
that's how you spell attached, right? No?
No, there's no, I think there's just CH,
Okay.
no T, yeah. Yeah. I think you need one more E in cylindrical too.
Where, oh. I don't even,
Okay, but before we do this, can I just ask a couple questions? Are you seeing this Constance as a singular system, or is there a community that all have connected waste water? Like, is this a portable unit for one Airstream? Do you want it to be deployable and go with you where you move? Or is this part of the kind of site where everybody comes in would have it?
yeah, so it could be both and. So there could be lightweight that goes with you and is just for cleaning the water, filtering the water, and being able to put it right where you are. So like right now I'm at a beautiful campsite in Arizona, and I could water the ground here if that was legal. Obviously it's not, because it's wastewater, but so this would be completely filtered.
So, because I
So you
think
could
your
water
what
vegetables.
if prompt might be something like, what if a lightweight wastewater system could be part of an Airstream?
Yep,
And it would allow you to filter the waste and spread it wherever it was needed.
yep. And then the other one is that there's a larger system that it's all going to, and then there's a
Let's just
vegetable
try let's just try one
single?
and see how we do, if that's the one you want to see.
Sure.
what'd you say, Lauren? I
Okay,
couldn't hear you.
so it's imagine the prompt, what if the Airstream had a portable wastewater treatment unit that could travel with it, filter wastewater, and distribute that wastewater wherever it was needed. Does that sound right, Constance?
Yeah, it's actually the gray water, not the black water. So, but I don't think it matters for the.
Do you want us to change it to gray water? Yeah, let's change it to gray water. Any other amendment there?
Nope.
And do you have a style that you want this to be in? Do you want it to look realistic? Do you want it to look like a blueprint for how to make it? Like what, or do you just want to see what it comes up with first?
Sure, it could be anything.
Okay, let's just go as it is then. Fire away, Eva.
What's happening is that they're all these tall cylindrical things, right? And so that's not going to be gravity fed. So what I don't know how to describe is to have it low, so that it's coming where the wastewater is coming
I
out
think
is
you
like
just need to say gravity
higher
fed.
level.
Have you tried gravity fed?
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's like tire level, and then it's long and wide, so it can hold a fair amount as it's slowly feeding.
Wow, that's pretty cool how it's already looking like a spectral image.
See, there's something that we're not saying, or the way that it's, we're describing it.
I think they have it on the, in image 2. I think they have it on the front of the Airstream. Can we make that bigger?
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's not where it would have to be. And it's also quite small. So that just looks like a regular water filter where you just put the hose in and then it's like a Berkey. So that's cool, but it's not what I'm imagining.
So maybe we have hit the limits of what we can do here. What I would suggest you try and do, maybe Jack or someone else, is find an image of pipes that are distributing it and feed it to the AI and ask them for a description of
Hmm.
that thing. Jack, do you think you could do that?
I've never-
I'm thinking about the movie by I can't remember the name of the filmmaker right now, early 20th century film called Metropolis. Is it Fritz Lang?
Yeah, Fritz Lang.
I'm thinking that you might want to try in the style of Fritz Lang. I would go with a different prompt. I would say, what if a community lived in deployable air in what if a community lived in airstreams where gray water was not networked and spread
Hmm.
to facilitate native plant growth in the deserts of the Southwest in the style of Fritz Lang's Metropolis? That would be the prompt I would try.
I was
Anyone
hoping for
try
a
it?
food garden, actually.
Anyone want to try that? I can try it. Let me load it. Or
How do you spell Fritz Lang?
Fritz
Yeah.
Lang.
Oh, okay. So I
And
got
the
it.
film is Metropolis.
Where for community?
And food garden rather than native garden. Productive garden maybe is the right
Hmm.
way to say it. Jack, are you able to share your screen? Are you doing it?
Yeah, I'm changing a few words that I think might visually create what we're looking for.
Thank you.
What if a community lived in airstreams with pipes?
That's a good idea, Nicholas, drawing it. And so I drew, this is like bad because I don't draw, but a sketch of the Airstream and this long, low thing that goes all alongside of it, very low. I don't know if you guys can see that very well.
Hmm.
That would be cool to feed it into Midjourney with the same prompt and see what it comes up with. If you have an image of the drawing that you can upload on the chat or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, can you use your iPhone, Constance, to take a
I think so,
photo?
yeah.
That way we can load that into Midjourney and so we can work with your drawing.
Mhm.
Good idea, Nick. Good idea, Alex. See, this is why it's good to work with your friends. It's harder to do alone. Jack, is it coming up with anything?
Yes, I'm just not sure if it's exactly what we're looking for.
Can you show it to us?
Yeah. This one has the garden outside, the
That's kind of cool. Could we see that one up close? I like the garden that's wrapping over the Airstream. That's gonna be a bummer when it has to move. That looks pretty cool. I mean, do you like that, Constance? Is that going where you're kind of closer?
Well, that certainly is a nice environment. I don't see the filter.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing is all about this logistical.
Yeah.
Oh. Um, mm.
It's so interesting that like the most practical thing is the most challenging thing, isn't it? Like the fantasies are so incredibly beautiful of the biomorphic buildings and the nervous system as sage and body, and then this super practical thing is so hard. Oh, you're muted, Lauren.
Maybe one of the prompts can include engineered drawing for a Airstream that includes wastewater management system connected by a gravity-fed deployable pipe that feeds a productive garden in the style of an engineered drawing.
Mhm.
Can I just say that I also was struggling, like, but when I was just putting broad things that were just to spark creativity, it was giving a lot of really cool images. But anytime I was trying to get like hyper specific with wanting to see a really specific thing, that's when I was like, I'm not getting what I want. And I think it's really interesting because then that still leaves like room for us as artists to maybe take what it gives you and build on that and then get it to exactly what you want, you know? So there's like a really good way to work with it, I think. Because yeah, I had a similar issue with anything like super hyper specific.
Interesting. Yeah. And if it's really for more like designers of Airstreams and Berkeys and people who would possibly make something like that, then it would be more like a architectural drawing or a yeah.
I'm curious, Constance, if these regulations on gray water have to do with collection and storage, and if they're regional.
Well, I mean, gray water is being used in all sorts of places,
Right.
whether it's recycled just as it is, right? It goes underneath the ground because you can't put it on top of food and stuff, right? So that's happening already. So this would be like nobody, unless it's sent to a wastewater system, nobody's doing it on their own, like in their own either little community of a few houses or a small village, or one Airstream where you take your own, sink and shower water and clean it enough to have your own vegetable garden.
Just my policy mind is wondering, because people do, I put my bath water in my backyard with a pump. And it's my property, so no one knows that that's my bath water. I'm curious if this is where you're parking your RV, that if there is policy in place for, I know storage gets,
Definitely.
yeah,
You
storage of
can't-
that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I know you can't put your gray water anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, when you're going to an RV park or a campground or anywhere, anywhere where there's any regulations, that wouldn't be allowed. But if there was a system that was understood by the legal framework to be filtered like a Berkey, that it would be clean enough to put anywhere. So it's like we use tap water, to water plants, which is crazy. But
Okay, well, I think that we have found a limitation of direct success. So it's not just CRAN, it's also Midjourney. We're not getting closer to what Constance is wanting to do, which is to create a proposal for new policies. So again, going back to the Lucy Lippard statement, what do you want to say? Who do you want to say it to, and how do you want to say it to? It's good to sort of get to things that you see as the limitation of the genre, and good to know, right? Because again, we're just workshopping these, but thank you so much, Jack and Yeva and Alex, for supporting Constance, and thank you, Constance, for your being willing to spar with us and play with this, because I think, again, it's helpful to know that it's not always easy to get what you want, even with an AI. And so you got to keep working with it. I'm sure there is the right solution. I'm finding a similar limitation in the work that I'm doing right now, which is I need to create a cut plan for the concrete in the LA River that will allow me to remove the concrete and stack it as a wellhead for the water that I'm conveying. And I don't want to cut it twice. I want the cuts to be what I use. And I'd like it to be in the shape of a vortex. And it's way too technical. I get completely outlandish, impossible things to translate to engineers. And I'm meeting with a Caltech guy today at 3, whose specialty this is on Zoom, on mathematical modeling, which may be a subgenre. And if I'll tell him, about this limitation of visualization for those of us who are working with actual infrastructure adaptation. And I understand your frustration on a personal level. So thank you for sharing that. It's really coded. Independence from the water grid is an act of seen as an act of challenge to land use. That's how all the Occupy style movements got shut down, as they cut off your water supply. Water and energy is freedom. So if you can't work it, you're forced back into some kind of compromise. So it's good to come up against these edges, because they kind of let you know a lot about, your questions are good ones. And it's not an easy, as my friend, the scientist, said about one of my speculations, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is you're wrong about what you're doing. And the good news is you're asking the right questions. Right. And I think that that's a similar situation here. Speculative ecology should include very hands-on, clear questions that have visualizations that you're able then to say, well, I'm interested in changing how people behave by giving them a drawing which says this could be done.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for helping.
Would anybody else like to share or workshop an idea they have? Jamie Grace?
Yeah, I'm dying to know if if Jack or Alex can use the physical sculpture that I actually made. It's about 17 feet tall and it's reclaimed steel. And I'd love to see if we could speculate what those movement patterns of murmurations would be if it actually, in the fantastical sense, so merging those images that you posted, Jack, in relation to Alex's movement patterns. And I built it just for that.
Can you put the image in the chat bar?
Yeah, they're in there.
Oh, okay, the sculpture?
Yeah.
Can somebody give it a try? I don't see it, but wait.
I'm saving it to my computer,
Okay,
putting it in Midjourney.
Jack, can you share your screen while you're doing it so we can all watch how you do that?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeva, which style do you, when you said you love the style of the images, which style?
So I have-
Rainy.
Oh,
Yeah.
Rainy's ones, the blue ones, those
Yeah.
are cool.
It's just very colorful and bright and like fantastical. It almost looks like
Yeah,
animation style almost. Like, I don't know. It just really
oh yeah,
beautiful.
those are super cool. Did you see those, Constance? Did you see Rainy's images of your prompt in the chat bar?
Rainey's.
Played with style.
Oh, yeah, those are beautiful. Yeah. And the Airstreams are so shiny.
Okay, so here's Jack working with this sculpture. Can you describe the image, Jamie Grace, in the prompt?
That's a good question. I suddenly find myself at a loss for words. It's a organic item that has died, i.e. the tree, and the steel sculpture of inorganic material that has been augmented by time. So rectilinear shapes that make a rectilinear sort of pedestal, and a organic form that is no longer growing, but the essence of natural patterns of growth still exist.
So I'm just wondering, Jack or Alex, whether taking that image and doing that thing where you take the image and ask for the description of it might be an interesting way to go, you know? Remember how maybe Alex, you could try that while we're doing this image prompt.
Yes, I cannot find the image. Can Jamie post it?
I couldn't find it either. Let me see. Oh yeah, it's on the chat bar, like just before your post that talked about movement ecology.
Oh, okay. Let me see.
Oh, and she put it there again. Sorry. It's at the
Oh,
bottom.
thank you. Perfect.
While we're waiting for that, or while we're workshopping it, I thought I would just mention about the scientist in that conversation when he was explaining that he was we were asking all the right questions. We encountered him in our exhibition at Desert X, and what was really interesting about interacting with him was he was so negative about the original experience and his disillusionment with all things related to the Salton Sea. And he was one particular individual who was not unwilling, but unable to participate in the speculative ecology what if binoculars. He literally couldn't come up with anything. And then we tried it again when he was on the phone with us, and he couldn't come up with anything again. And I thought, wow, his imagination is really shut down. And so when we finished with that conversation, even though he said we're asking all the right questions, what I noticed was actually very hopeful, because he had gone from extremely negative to actually being open to consider other things. And in this small, teeny tiny way, he was able to at least engage with what if, which before he absolutely wasn't. Not because of any malintent, but just because he was so unused to practicing thinking this way. I thought, wow, just moving the needle just that little tiny bit actually helps. You know, it's a practice, like the practice of imagination and curiosity is a practice like anything else. So it was in some ways heartwarming to see. And I don't agree with him. I think we actually can use more there that we don't even know what it is yet, just by asking the questions, because we move the needle that much, a little bit. So I'm adding that.
Jack, could we so look
Yeah,
at-
for some reason, it's like taking extra time, like it says. Right here it says waiting to start. Sometimes it does this. I don't know why it says waiting to start. I don't know why it doesn't just start. Sometimes when I put it in twice, it starts going. No, it says pause. I'm not sure why.
It did that for me too when I was doing prompts, and I kind of just deleted them and just restarted again, and then it picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I just added the description of this image in the Zoom chat too.
Thank you. So could you try that? Could you try cutting and pasting the description into the Midjourney as an image prompt without the picture? And maybe add the,
Oh, there it goes.
okay. Just be curious.
Yeah, I could do one without the prompt too.
Just, it's interesting to take how they take an image and give you what the prompt would be for it. See what you get back.
Jack, I don't know what subscription you have, but /fast I found, or it's a prompt to make things go much more quickly if you have access to that feature.
But I put it in /fast. I thought I was already on fast mode. I think I am. So
Whoa, this is so exciting.
yeah, it looks like it's working.
That's crazy. It's so much like Alex's drawing now. You guys made the same work.
This is so cool.
Whoa. Which one do you guys like? I like this one.
Jamie Grace, which one do you like? Okay, we got one. Whoa, I love how the murmurations are outside and inside the frame.
Mind blown, because I spent several years in the physical field walking and observing these movement patterns and tracing them and like recording them in my brain. But I've only just begun to try to get them into a physical form of what I actually saw. This is incredible.
I just love how, although it's static, it appears to be so dynamic. Like at any point you expect movement or you sense movement. Oh my goodness, that's so cool.
I wanted the pedestal to function as the sculpture, as the base, but also be the thing that supports all the movement, so that the sculpture was forever changing, which was the actual flight pattern. So the pure ephemerality and the pure concretism of the interaction of these two polarities. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Alex, for doing
Yeah,
this.
it's
Wah.
exciting.
Wait, can we try one thing with this, just to kind of show the possibilities? Can Jamie Grace choose one and then we press like version, because they do versions of any one of these. Like it,
Yeah, I started iterating this one.
yeah, could you try it for us? We press version 1.
I pressed it twice, so we're gonna get, so this is, yeah, this is the multiple iterations of
Of
it.
version 1. Because I really like the bottom, the 4th one, because it looks like a vortex, and I have a thing for vortex. Oh wait, on the iterations. That,
This fourth one,
Yeah.
or this fourth
yeah,
one? This one also seems
Yeah.
like a tornado.
yeah.
It makes me think of, I'm really obsessed too with Alexander Calder's kinetic sculptures and how they kind of move in space. So I just wonder, I was just thinking now, what if it would kind of act as a mobile and moving through space? But I don't know, it's the brainstorm thought.
I once did a tree with leaves falling off of it, and the leaves were turning into birds. It reminds me of that.
So Jamie Grace, is this helpful?
Yeah, my mind is like melting in on itself because it's been in there for quite a while, and that's what I have been envisioning. And the opposite to Constance, she had an idea what was in her head and wasn't able to quite, but this is it, more or less. This is it. I also have another one that I've been dreaming of outside the Pompidou as an actual public sculpture. That's a giant nest that is a space for all the pigeons to constantly be instead of being moved on and displaced from everywhere.
Can you share a link to that sculpture?
Will you say again, please?
Can you share a link to this sculpture in the form of a nest near Central Pompidou? Or does it? Oh.
I find that if you take an extra moment to really be particular with the language, and you get a better result.
All things wish to fly.
Does anybody else have one that they would like to try in the last few minutes of class?
I could share some of the images, the past images that came up. If you
Yes,
like.
please.
All right, I'll share my screen. There were so many prompts that here, I'm going to put full screen 1 second here and then share my screen. Okay, hopefully we can get this. It's not working. I don't think. I might just have to share my images. Nope. Okay, I'll just throw some in the chat. The prompts were pop-up tea house, and they were changing all the time, just like AI, like pop-up tea house, post-industrial, post-human infrastructure, discussing post-human infrastructure, reading James Bridle, listening to Radiohead Kid A, listening to Radiohead, Moonshaped Pool, diverse genders, diverse races, diverse cultures, diverse places. But I will, let's see what I can do here. And just envisioning what this might look like. Okay, so here. Okay. There we go. I wish I could share my screen. I don't know what that was. And so what came up, the patterns I started to see were post-human the interstitial or the transition between what's possible and where we are. So that the transition from human infrastructure or human focused or human favoring infrastructure and this interstitial liminal space where diverse groups discuss what the next thing is, while also addressing the untended to things in our culture I call trauma that have often been projected into the natural world and consciously and unconsciously gotten into our designs. I was particularly inspired by the Bridle reading this week and this thought of computers and machines being more relational and adaptive all the time and interactive with the surrounding environment. So this was very much about, I didn't intend this to be, but it seemed to embody that. It was fun to put the Radiohead references in there, by the way. What else? I got the sense too, how this last chapter opened about an oracle, and this almost seemed like an oracle space, or like a post or not the human infrastructure, not at the post-human, but that transition or liminal space where things are in transition, almost an oracle to that, a place to sit and both be and discuss. And so also the space of the architecture it wasn't about building something new, and not just repurposing, but using spaces as they exist in the decay and seeing the beauty there. And I experience them as being very atmospheric.
So these are all AI?
Yes. Yeah.
With a prompt, do they all have the same prompt and you?
No, I would shift all the time, like to try to change the little things like discussing James Bridle's book, Ways of Being, or if they were just discussing James Bridle, or if they listened to a particular Radiohead album, or if they were discussing post-human infrastructure, or if and it was too much to keep track of what each one did. So I just started.
So can you read us any of the prompts?
Oh, sure. What if 4 male, female, non-binary teenagers from different countries, different cultures discussed James Bridle's book, Ways of Being, in pop-up tea house, sitting on ground in parking lot, drinking pu'er tea from tiny cups, teapot inside abandoned factory overgrown with weeds, talking passionately. And then little variations. Sitting in abandoned factory, sitting in parking lot, sitting in empty field. And then some things I asked for were never realized, like asking for a temporary room divider screen made of corroded aluminum and stained canvas, and that never got realized. But sometimes, as you saw, there were paintings that appeared, which seemed to work. Sometimes I put Chinese tea ceremony, sometimes I put pu'er tea, sometimes I put just drinking tea. sometimes talking passionately. The Radiohead prompt seemed to, sometimes it became a little anime-esque, and it seemed to generate a kind of a serious tone in how they appeared. The figures, the human figures in the screen.
But always James Bridle.
No, sometimes it wasn't James Bridle. Sometimes it was just discussing, just in conversation, and then discussing the environment, discussing James Bridle, discussing ways of seeing, discussing post-human infrastructure.
There's one with a kind of circular, like almost mandala on a wall, and then a carpet on the floor. Do you know what the prompt for the circular mandala and carpet was? Or
What I found was often it said sitting in a circle,
okay,
and that got interpreted in different ways. Sometimes there was a circular, it was like a circular painting, and there was nothing beyond that. Sometimes those circles appeared as mandalas, sometimes a circular sort of archway. And I that was just the chaotic creativity. Oh, I interpreted that or experienced that as sort of the chaotic creative nature of this form.
I have a question. In some of these photos, they're like looking at us, while in some of the photos, like they're looking to each other. Like, is that something that you inputted in, or is that just something that just happened in dialogue with the AI?
The AI literally just did that on its own. I'd never asked for facing the camera or the screen. One of the constant prompts was in conversation or in discussion, sometimes in passionate discussion. And it is interesting, what was interesting to me, that a lot of that, it was more of that pose, but of facing and actually, yeah, almost like a portrait rather than in conversation. I don't know how that came about.
how do you feel about these images in relationship to what you were trying to get to?
I stepped away in this process of having a clear image and was surrendering more and more to collaboration with both Midjourney and others. But I wasn't expecting, but really appreciated the idea of creating something and more of finding these liminal spaces that embody decay and wabi-sabi and transition, and looking for those and actually responding to what is there rather than trying to create something afresh. Less imposing and more of being in the time, the place, and the space.
Would you specify day or night?
I did not know.
So it's interesting what kinds of images get generated, like mostly it's daytime.
Yes. In fact, they all seemed. I don't recall a single one that was.
Well,
night.
there's one that's in a tent. It's, I think, the first one that you posted, where there's a strong center light. Around the image, it looks like it's dusk, like you can sort of see trees and like you're in a forest, but the light looks like it's ebbing. And then there's other ones where like there's bright light coming through a window, almost like a Dutch master's painting or something. So I was interested that you didn't give it any visual prompt about light or.
No, I really I desired to, but I decided to focus on other prompts because there was so much that I could have played with, and just let the Midjourney bot play. I didn't ask for different, like some were super photorealistic, some were more Dutch master-like. I was reminded, I don't know what the name of the genre is, or genres, where there were landscape paintings of sort of pastoral scenes, sometimes shepherds or farmers or wanderers in old like Roman ruins, etc. And I had that sense too at times.
Sorry. Interesting, just kind of coming back to the movement versus stillness idea. All your image feels very still in the same kind of way that Yeva's felt still, like somebody, there's the eye of the viewer looking in on these scenes. Whereas other ones like feel like they're in full motion. And it's kind of just interesting how that happens. Like, I wonder, for example, how the prompt in conversation becomes still rather than animate,
Yes. And I
Right?
wonder
That-
too.
That's like one of the things that like from your prompt, if I were gonna like think about conversation and what you're trying to get at, it's exchange, whether it's in energy or something, and all of them feel very non-conversational to me. So would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And actually I think a lot of them had sitting. But yes, maybe animated, not having sitting, standing, like in motion, in process, something like that.
Like,
would
I
be-
wonder if, I think it's fascinating that you have to suggest that, like here's another like threshold maybe for Midjourney is that it doesn't understand what conversation is.
I think it has something to do with like how it's even drawing the images of young people. If you think of the most circulated images of young people, it's usually like marketing magazines. It's like about selling a product, not really showing them in dialogue and conversation, unless it's like a TV show. There's not really many images of young people just like,
I also think it's typical of modern, like the way that in modern society, people are pictured in images. It's like these stagnant poses and they're never really interacting, versus like in a Raphael painting, everyone is doing these, like someone's playing chess, someone's having like a philosophical conversation. So maybe in the style of a Renaissance painter, there might be more activity.
Great feedback and ideas. Yeah, and thank you, particularly Lauren, for that dynamic element it's so missing.
Yeah, there's also no like there's sensuality in the backgrounds, almost like still life painting from another time. Like the way fabrics or things like that read a certain sense of sensuality, but the absence of the teapot having any sense of heat, or nobody's grabbing for a cup of tea, or like I'm thinking just about how much tea ceremony and tea is a part of your practice, and I'm wondering what the kind of prompt around conversation and tea might be, if that would be like what if what if the ritual of sharing tea created an atmosphere of conversation amongst a diverse group of human beings, right? How just simple tweaks, in the way that we learn to talk, because that just also felt very like fashion shooty,
Yeah, it felt like a little bit like I would see this in Dazed in 2035. But you're also talking about something that's so based in the now and like the knowledge sharing. Like it's just like, yeah, I'm so curious about how AI is going to find images of like sharing knowledge rather than like, I don't know, I'm just curious, like a conversational style. Like, what does that look like for an image for AI to generate?
I wonder if you put in something about like theater or scene from play, film scene, like, so that people were caught mid-interaction, if that would help train the images somewhat.
Mm,
I'd like to offer something here, though, that is just for consideration, but I noticed that most of the images have an element of Eastern-based individuals, and in collectivist culture, it's more respectful for connection to not look people in the eye.
Hmm.
So I just thought that's a fascinating way that this is generated. And in Western culture, it's often interpreted as disconnection, but that's actually the way that collectivist Eastern respectfulness is. There is not the eye contact, and they're all looking at the things, and not all of them, but they're either looking straight ahead at the camera or down at the table. So for what that's worth, just considering that for a moment.
I also wonder, Harold, if first, before generating images, just like as an experiment, you would write down the conversations and what they're talking about.
mm,
Like with points from Bridal, and you're kind of just imagining dialogues between, and maybe, you know, like a script or like a film script of some sort, where who is the character, and or like who is the person talking, and where's the context they come from, and kind of write it all down. And I don't know, it just emerged from me right now. And maybe that can become like the words or conversations, or it can become prompts for Midjourney.
Like character narratives to add
Mm.
to like the visual narrative.
Yeah.
Well, we have come to the end of our time together, and I have put a link into the chat bar to an invitation for an event on the Water Community Power Discord next week. And I wanted to ask if he will be able to attend, because he has added a project to Discord that I would love to begin our Discord section of this post-class with. My aspiration with Water Community Power is that for those people who would like to pursue projects in speculative ecology, that we can continue to hold space to develop them like we are right now. But if you have projects, we have added, I'll see if I can share my screen for a minute. Can you see my page? Discord? Water Community Power, and under post-human infrastructure, we have this area for post-human projects. And here we have Ree's project posted. And I thought it would be similarly interesting if this ending is a beginning for any of your projects. If you wanted to practice putting a project in here as a starting point for something you want to do, we can start by keeping this as the extra 1 hour class that I wanted to have after we kind of veered off. We had a 2 hour kind of diversion in some of our sessions. So I thought I could, make myself available for that. But then afterwards, it just becomes something that anybody on Water Community, you can make your own event around your own project, right? So that this starts to become open for anybody to use to work on a project. So similarly, under post-human infrastructure, you will also see all of the readings that we've had as PDFs here. So after the class is over, you can have access to all of the readings, and you can also have access to all of the some of the lectures that we've had so far, with if you want to go back over them. And we also have Alexandra's curation of learning and mending up here under ways of being. So all of the whiteboards that we've done together, thank you very much, Alex, for posting. So if you haven't had a chance yet to go to those and you want to listen to them, here are all the YouTube links, because I know we're all super busy people. And it has been a total pleasure to work with all of you. I've learned so much. Thank you for helping me try and teach post-human infrastructure or host a conversation about it. Just really great to get to know each and every one of you. So if you'd like to stay connected, I'd love to do that. And if you wouldn't mind, also in the chat bar, if you want to go on our mailing list at Metabolic Studio so that you get an email when we're doing different things, if you don't mind adding how to reach you as an email. We'll also put out an email list on the Discord for the class, so that, we'll put an email together on the Mighty Network so that we all have each other's emails if you want to stay in touch with each other. And I leave it open if anybody wants to give me feedback. I'll stay on till the last person leaves. I'm happy to hear your feedback about what you would have liked more of or less of, or how this has worked for you, and just say thank you so much. And special thanks to Alex and Mary Rose for their support in this class. I received a tremendous amount of support, and to Jack for stepping in to help us with your immense skills. And to all of you for making yourself vulnerable to actually workshop stuff in class, which is something not everybody can do. And I really appreciate the vulnerability of being able to host a studio-based class on Zoom. It takes a lot of trust and building of that trust.
I've got to take off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Constance. Pleasure.
Bye, everyone. See you on the Discord.
See you next week.
Just want to thank you, Lauren, for the classes. Had a great time and meeting everyone. Like, we are in different contexts, different places. There's a pedagogical affordance in this geographical diversity. And that's it. Thank you a lot, everyone. I hope see you time somewhere else, physically or virtually.
I'm coming to Brazil in October, so I hope to meet you.
Oh, it would be really nice. Keep in
Yeah.
touch. And yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Okay. And we'll see you next week. Will you be able to be there on Thursday?
For sure. Surely.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ree.
I think you should do another one, Lauren,
Another what?
another class.
Okay. Yeah, I think so too. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, we're just getting started. I can't make next week, but I will definitely be there on Discord in the future.
Excellent, Rainey. Thank you so much. I learned so much from your images and from talking with you, and great luck out. It sounds like this was good priming for your residency where you won't have connectivity.
Yeah.
So you know, being able to have those images as you go in off the grid. I'll be really curious what comes. I hope you'll share on Discord when you get back.
I'm gonna print my deck so I can bring those images without getting busted for having technology with me.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to sneak in your tech.
Yeah, on paper.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rainey.
Yes, thank you for this class. This has been incredible. Yeah, I feel like this is exactly what I needed before I start grad school. Like, I think that like even having this new skill is just gonna just make it so much easier to, I don't know, just like, yeah, this has been incredible. Learned so much, like expanded my vocabulary, sense of self, sense of engagement with the natural world. Just, yeah, thank you. Yeah, this was great.
And such a pleasure to have you, Jasmine.
Thanks.
And see you in the floodplain in a week.
Yes, send me the information.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for participating.
Yeah, and I hope you do it again. You should definitely do this class again. More lectures.
Okay. I've never heard that before, but thanks. Okay.
Yeah, definitely more lectures. I second
Oh my
that.
God.
Like hearing you talk.
Okay.
Agree.
All right. Oh.
Alex, I want to make sure I get you the gemotherapy book, the one about the stem cells from plants from the Romania region. And I will do that when I get back to LA. I haven't been to my apartment in like a year. So it's there, but I can either send it to you or, you know, drop it in the mail, or you can come over for tea or whatever.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so curious.
Yeah.
And so I do plan to, it's my goal this year to get to LA. So I have so many friends there and I definitely want to visit. So maybe I'll let you know.
Wow, you're not in LA. I thought you were in LA.
No, I'm in Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay, I just had it in my mind that you're in LA somewhere, but yes, you're RISD, of course.
Alex and I have actually never met in some form. So we have a completely virtual relationship so far. And we've been working really closely together now for, 9 months or so. So it's interesting how this post-human connection can actually be generative.
Yeah.
Constance will be passing through your region in a couple of weeks. She spends the whatever season it is we're going into now in this summer. She spends the summer in Provincetown, and I like the Indian restaurant that's in Providence, Rhode Island. There's a really amazing, like the best Indian restaurant I've ever been to. I'm sure you have been to it.
What's
if you
the name?
go to school. I'll find it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exciting. I'll reach out to Constance.
Thank you, Lauren, for such a wonderful class. Thank you.
Jack, it was so great having you in the class. And let's keep talking.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much for your help. And thank you for your inspiration. I only knew about Midjourney because of you.
Right. I was so obsessed with it for the past few months, and then it was pretty amazing to see it come into the class. It was like, oh.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a bit about the name of Midjourney and how it reminds us that we literally are all Midjourney. And the more we see AI as a ally or a tool, or at least a thing not to be feared, but something that could actually help us with our Midjourney as humans, that's like, it's a nice frame to.
Yeah. I learned so much. I'm so excited about all especially the collection of images I made about, visualizing these ecological systems, these urban green infrastructures. I think it's so important. And so even just to get a glimpse of what that looks like is really exciting for me, and super grateful for the opportunity to have the time to contemplate that and think about that. Super important. It's the type of work I'm interested in. So thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I really enjoyed the class. Thank you, Alex, for helping with facilitating. You really like got me to finally try this AI stuff that I haven't like I kind of been avoiding, but it's really exciting. I'm excited to keep working with it. And I'm just so happy to have met so many people and connected with so many other artists. So I feel like it's been such a good conversation to have everyone giving feedback. Thank you everyone who gave feedback to anything I posted. It's just really helpful. I hope we all can keep in touch. And yes, Lauren, you should definitely teach again. Should do another one for sure.
Thank you. Well, we're going to try it with these Art Center students starting a week from Friday. But without it being you know, virtual, because we'll be in person. But similar principles. I want to see how it applies in person. I think we all did a really great job of working together in the last couple weeks. And I think that the Midjourney format online could have a live action version as well. You know, like I've seen that happen in clay. I've seen that happen in drawings. But Zoom is one other way. And it would be great to sort of make things and then photograph them and then feed that into an AI and say, give me a description of this. So I think that's what we'll try.
Don't forget to pack your binoculars.
Okie dokie.
I so loved the collaborative element and the increasing